Hey there, welcome to Art History 5. My name is Terry McDermott and I am your instructor for this course. My hope for today's video is to give you a good overview of the class and set you up for success. So you may want to take some notes. You could pause and go to week 1 or over here and print out the syllabus. That might make it a little easier for you, or just take some notes on a regular sheet of paper. You may want to note what time I talk about certain things so that later, if you're trying to remember what I said about journals or homework, you can kind of go back to that place. So you've made it this far to our site. Your homepage will change only every about 5 weeks. So this has week 1, which is just a sort of getting started. That's a picture of our textbook. Week 2 really starts like the real meat of the class, all the way through to week 5, where you have a discussion board and a quiz. After that, at the very beginning of the 6th week, this will all change. It'll have all the new chapters for you. So always just kind of start at the homepage. Let's start here on week 1, just getting started. At the top here is the syllabus, so let's start there. There's also a ton of student resources. This list here under student resources is also attached to the end of the syllabus. Please, 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 that's an important link right there. There is a ton of resources at Chafee for any kind of issue you could be possibly facing. They've probably thought of it and have a plan for you. So please, work smart as you move through your career at Chafee, and make sure that you are completely aware of what those fabulous resources are. So, take 10 minutes. It could totally be beneficial to you. The next thing before we move on, I want to point out is this extra credit bio. It has a due date of August 26th, which is next Sunday. Yes, next Sunday, checking the calendar. You have to do that. Extra credit kind of sounds like, oh, you don't really have to. You kind of have to, because I have to drop you if you have not participated in the first week of class. And so that's what I go by. You could, do your first journal assignment and not do the bio, but throw something up there on that bio by August 26th, because otherwise I will assume you're not participating. Some people think logging in is considered participating, but it's not. You have to actually submit something. So get that extra credit bio done. It'll give you 5 points, and it'll also ensure that I don't drop you. All right, so let's look at the syllabus here. Let's see. All right. So the very top tells us that we are doing Western art history. So it's Europe and the United States. It starts in the Renaissance, actually kind of the end of the Middle Ages, and it goes to the contemporary. Has a course description there. It tells you that we look at different periods in art. It's a little bit confusing in this class because we start midway through the story of art. We're starting like in the 1300s rather than starting from the very beginning in prehistory. But so the first lecture will kind of catch you up to speed. But we look at different religions and philosophies and ways of life, culture and history, and we look at it through the arts, like the visual arts and painting and sculpture and architecture and things like that. Materials, our textbook, that was a picture you saw on our homepage. Go by that picture. There's a lot to get wrong with the textbook. It's by somebody named Kleiner, but it's called Gardner's Art Through the Ages. It has to be the Western perspective. It has to be volume 2. Volume 1 is a totally different class. That's ARTH5. And it has to be the 14th edition. I guess it doesn't have to be, but your page numbers won't jive with ours. Even though the information doesn't change, you really want those page numbers to be the same to cut down on confusion. Next thing is the grading. The book, as much as we cover in the book, is really 11 chapters. So there are 11 journals that we will talk about when we go through the site. They're worth 10 points each. There are 11 homework assignments, and they are worth 25 points each. There are 4 discussion boards, and those are timed before each of the exams. 3 regular exams and 1 final exam. Those are worth 10 points each. There are 3 exams or quizzes. Those are 20 multiple choice and 2 essay questions. So like 2 big solid paragraphs for essays. After that is a term paper that we'll talk about. It's 100 points. It's 4 pages double spaced. The last thing is a final exam. It's cumulative. It's the same, idea of the 20 multiple choice and 2 essays. It just covers the whole gamut. So that comes there at the end. And I have a little study guide for that. So it's 925 points, which is a weird point scale. And here is your grading scale down here. I don't really go by percentages when it comes to your grade. I go by the number of points that you've earned. So you're going to use Canvas and the grades tab here to check your grades. Please check my comments. If I give you a comment, it's a way to help you boost your grade. Most likely, it might be a little hint for the test. You got to really read those comments. So that kind of entices you to check your grades. You take the grade total that you have in Canvas, and then you take it to this grade scale down here. And so you can sort of see in the beginning, you'll be way down here in the F range, and then you start sort of winding your way up the scale. So please keep an eye on how you're doing with those points that you are earning. Here's the schedule. You probably won't end up coming to the syllabus for this because all the due dates are put into Canvas for you. Every week is kind of the same. I like to keep things regular. It helps you to not miss due dates. For the most part, you do a journal and a homework every week. The journal is on Wednesday, and the homework is due on Sunday. Let's see. That only changes when we do a quiz week. In a quiz week, there's a discussion forum due on Wednesday, just like that journal would be. And then there's the quiz, and that's due on Sunday. And this sort of follows our little pattern until we get to the end when the paper's due. There's just one thing due that week, and that's the 9th on Sunday. And then the final is on the 14th. And for that final, again, it's a quiz. So you have a discussion forum first, and then a final quiz. All right, so let's talk about late work. I do accept late work, but it's at a cost to you. It is a 20% deduction if you miss a due date. Here's the exception to that. It only applies to journals and homework, doesn't apply to quizzes, and it doesn't apply to discussion forums because people are relying on you to make a first post so that you can make your second post. So when you do a discussion forum, you're posting and then you're responding to somebody's post. Well, if everybody posts on Sunday night, then you won't have enough people in the lineup to comment on. So your initial post is due Wednesday. That has to be on time, and well, I won't accept that late work. And then your response to somebody else's is due on Sunday. So no late discussion, no late exam / quizzes, whatever you want to call them. The late journals and homework are accepted at a 20% deduction, but only up until the quiz for that particular chapter. So if you miss a due date next week, you are fine to turn that in late. Let's say you miss a homework and you want to turn it in late. You just have to make sure you have it in before quiz 1. So once the quiz for that information has passed, then no late work is accepted. So and I'll make sure I put this in a reminder to you. All right, drop deadline. September 9th is the last day to drop without a W. And November 2nd is the last day to drop with a W. I don't drop you. I only drop you the first week if you haven't done that bio or turned in something, or even just emailed me and said, don't drop me. Outside of that, I won't drop you. Even if you're failing and you don't show up, you're all grown up. So I leave that kind of stuff to you. As I said before, the end here are the student resources for your syllabi, and it shows the mission statement and things that are terribly interesting. But then after that, it has things like the Student Success Center for all the different campuses, the library. There's just a ton of good information, health services, any kind of tutoring you need. Chafee has thought of it. So please look through there and make sure you're asking questions about that. All right, let's go back home. We're done with the syllabus. So what I want to do next is start on a regular week. I'm going to explain one full week to you, and then every other week is going to look exactly the same. Our first chapter is called Late Medieval Italy. So if you just click on chapter 2, it starts with the heading up there, and that heading will correspond to what that chapter is called in your textbook. So you should be able to find that pretty easily. The next thing it says is week 2 happenings, or it'll say week 3 happenings. You can just start there. Everything on the happenings is everything you see down here. It just looks prettier. So if you go to the week 2 happenings, it tells you everything you have to do that week. It starts with the chapter heading, which is Late Medieval Italy, a picture from that time period, and then some like big ideas. Read these, it'll give you a little bit of an overview of what goes on in that chapter. And then it's the assignments for the week. The first thing is the journal. Remember that's due on the Wednesday of a particular week. The journal is a pre-reading activity, so you'll love this. You don't have to really do anything but look at the pictures in the chapter. You answer 3 questions, and you're ready to submit, you click here. You look at all the pictures together, and you look for, number 1, general traits the images may share. So that could be something like there's a lot of sculpture, there's a lot of religion in terms of the subject matter, everything is gold and beautiful, all the people are floating. Any kind of thing you look through and you go, yeah, I'm noticing a lot of these share the same thing. That's what you're putting. Now, these don't have to be beautifully crafted paragraphs. They're kind of like bullet points. Don't be too sparse. When you hear bullet points, don't think 2 or 3 words and you're done. But you can sort of chunk that information into bullet points. The second thing is an image that interests you and why. So take a second and look at that particular image. As you're doing this whole sort of picture walk through the textbook, look at the headings, kind of see what you're in for, get the lay of the land in terms of that particular chapter. So you're kind of taking in the chapter without reading it. So number 2 is an image that interests you and why. Why did that particular image catch your eye? What about it? Was it, the subject matter? Did you relate to the beautiful, maybe it's a religious work that sort of spoke to you. Maybe it's the subject matter, or it could be the medium, what it's made out of, that sort of thing. So why is that image interesting to you? And the third one is a question that comes to mind as you look at the images. Why is it so religious? Or why are people kind of floating in the air? Why does it look so flat? Do people not have a lot of talent at this time? It could be all kinds of questions. Do yourself a favor when you click on submit. Number your responses 1, 2, and 3. Put a number 1 literally, and then write your response, because sometimes people will forget the question at the end. But if you number 1, 2, 3 from the beginning, it's a little more obvious that you skipped something. So that's due on Wednesday. That's the journal, and it's worth 10 points. Those are pretty like gimme points. You got to know where your points are coming from. Those are the easy ones. So you got to get the full number of points in them. After that is your reading. This is our textbook. I don't have you read every page. I have you read the stuff I like, that I think is important. So, that's a gift. And so you really need to do the reading. And so I pare it down to the most essential image, or the most essential pages. The next thing is to listen to lecture and to take notes. You could read first and then listen to lecture, or you could listen to lecture and then read second. Some people are strong with sort of auditory learning. You're looking at images and you're listening to my voice. You take notes on that and then go back and do the reading. And you're like, oh, it makes much more sense. Or maybe you're a stronger reader. You read first and then you go to the lecture. Either way, that's up to you. You have to listen to the lecture, though. I know it's kind of down here and buried in number 3, but the lecture is how you're going to get through this class. Oftentimes in an online class, students don't see it so much as taking a class and learning a subject matter. They think of it more as accumulating points at any cost. And in the end, you just have to get up on that grade scale. You really have to take the class, and that is coming to class. And the way you come to class is you sit down and you listen to these lectures. The lectures are divided into little snippets. So, maybe 8 minutes, one might be 12 minutes. You sit down, you got your pen and paper, and you do a title: Late Medieval Italy Video Lectures and Overview. This is because eventually you're going to have to take the exam. And in the exam, it's timed. It's an hour and a half. You don't have time to look up every question. But, who are we kidding? You're taking it online. I'm not sitting next to you. So you have that notebook sitting right next to you. You want to know where to find that material. So make sure that you are taking very good notes and that they're very organized. What lecture you found that in. So make sure that you are taking good notes while you're listening to that lecture. And so these are all the lectures, but some of them are a little shorter than others. And then again, they correspond there with the reading. It's important to make sure that you really listen to those lectures when you submit the homework, because as I said before, the temptation is just to accumulate points. And the easiest way to do that is to just type my question into Google, get the answer. If you submit something to me that's not really relating to our class, it's very generic, it doesn't have any bits of lecture in it, I don't sort of hear my voice and my teaching, you are just giving me some sort of generic thing you found off of Google, you won't pass. And I'll be pretty stiff on that, especially in the beginning, to sort of make sure everybody realizes that if you're not listening to lecture, you're not really taking the class, and I can't sort of pass you through based on something you just sort of looked up really quickly. One really popular thing to do is that students will listen to only the lecture to get through their homework questions. So you'll do a homework question and go, oh, it's on this particular artist. I found that in my lecture, and I listened to one lecture for the whole week, and that's it. I can in Canvas see what you're doing and what you're watching and what you're clicking on. I don't make it a practice to go through and look at your account, but if I sense that's sort of what you're doing, it's definitely something that I can verify. So please be careful with that. So you've listened to the lectures, you've done the reading. Now you're going to look at those study questions. The study questions are where the exams come from. So if you know the answers to these questions, then you will do fine on the exam. What I would do, I like a little pen and paper rather than everything online, is I would just print these ahead of time. And as you go through the lecture, they're all pretty chronological. So you've got the first question there, what's the definition of art? That's like in lecture number 1. You're taking notes, so don't make a beautiful paragraph out of that answer, but make sure you got some bullet points and that you can answer that question because it's going to come up on the first exam. Now, these are study questions, and if you, as I said, know the answers to these and you're comfortable with them, then you're going to do great on the exam. But the other thing you need to know is that the bottom has key terms to study. These are the terms that I use in lecture. So you may want to print these too and have a little list nearby. When I talk about something, put the video on pause and write the answer, write what that definition is. Because chances are, there's going to be a question, you're going to go, oh, I have this written down. I know what empirical art is. If you look up empirical art in a Google search, it may not have the wording or the understanding that I'm giving in the lecture. So be careful of that. That's not really how you're going to do your best. Okay, so the next thing is to submit 2 homework questions. The homework questions come from the review questions. So you're looking through those review questions, you find 2 that you really like, and you submit 2 for homework. So while you're doing all of the study questions in your notes, because that's your best practice to get your best grade, you're only picking 2, and you're formulating a good 8 to 10 sentence paragraph for each one. When you're ready to submit that assignment, of course, this is what we do on Sunday. You have the journal on Wednesday, and this is Sunday. What you're going to do is click on the text entry. Don't upload a file because then I got to download. It's a kind of a pain. That is if you answer a question where I say, go online and find an image of by this particular artist, then you would put that there. But you can just click over to the text entry and just put your response here. I ask that you give me an idea of what question you're answering. So you can just go to my questions, copy paste the question, put it here, and then answer your question under that. These are worth 25 points. If you turn it in late, it's 20% reduction. So then you're only getting like 20 points. You need to have a good solid 8 to 10 sentences. You need to make sure you have some terminology in there. So make sure you have that term sheet from that particular chapter all printed out and see if you can stuff some of that terminology into your response. And you'll do great. Again, all that terminology and all the answers you need are in that lecture. So don't make life more difficult by going out on the internet and trying to find something and hoping that I kind of fall for it. Just listen to the lecture. It'll make your life so much easier. All right, so that is like your first full, content sort of week. So let's go back home. And so then there's week 3 and week 4, and then you go to the discussion board and the quiz time. So let's click there on week 5. And let's just talk real quick about that discussion forum. This one's on portraiture. There'll be a different topic before quiz 2, before quiz 3, and before the final quiz. This is due sort of on Wednesday and sort of on Sunday. Your initial post is due on Wednesday. And so it reminds you of that first post due Wednesday. And then your second post due Sunday. It will claim that you are late, but you are not, because I had to put in a due date. I wanted you to see the date for Wednesday. So it's a trigger that you have something due, but I will not deduct points for your response, which you do by Sunday. And it tells you what to do, and you're going to read the work of others. And they're kind of more, not so much content questions. They involve content, but more, kind of like, what do you think? And kind of has you sort of look at art in your own life in terms of portraiture. All right, so if you kind of follow the same plan every week up till quiz 2 and quiz 3, and things don't really get all that terribly different until the end, and that is with your final paper. Oh, I got to put your final quiz in here too. I don't see it. Okay, your final paper. Final paper is due December 9th. If you click here, it's going to give you your general instructions, and then here are your 3 choices. The general instructions tell you that it's a 4-page paper. Some people decide to write 3 pages and just touch the top of the 4th page. If you do that, that tells me you only want to be graded on a 75-point scale because you only did 75% of the work. If you want to be graded on a 100-point scale, then you have to write 100% of the paper, which is 4 pages. You have an introductory paragraph. And then you're going to address the images, and I will show you where the images are for each of your choices. And then you have a conclusion, and it gives you sort of an idea of where you can go with your conclusion, sort of forecasting forward in art. One thing that's tricky with this is being careful about not plagiarizing. Plagiarizing is unfortunately pretty rampant in an online class. If you choose to plagiarize on any assignment, you get a 0, and I write the word plagiarized in your comments, and then I leave it at that. It used to be you got a flowery paragraph and let's try to work this out, and it happens too much for that. Now you get a 0 and we move on. So here's how to avoid plagiarism. Number one, you never use the copy paste function. When you are reading the textbook, if you're reading it online, or if you're doing a Google search, if you ever want to use a source directly and you want to use a quote, that's fine. You need the quote marks and you need to cite. And here is proper citation. If you're doing your homework and you want to say, quote, me, or you want to quote the textbook, always cite. And you may not be very comfortable with citing, and maybe you're not quite sure. That is definitely you can learn about here, and you can ask me. It doesn't have to be perfect citing. It just has to show me that you are aware that that was not your information. You're not trying to pass it off as your own. So what I'm trying to say is it's better to do a bad job citing than it is just to go, I don't know how to do this, and I'm just going to hope for the best and plagiarize this. So please, please, please always cover yourself. Do not be accused of plagiarizing. It's a 0, and 100 points is a lot in this class. So you certainly want to be careful of that. Let's go back here to your choices for that final paper. There we go. All right, so your first one is early to high Renaissance. The second one is the Baroque period. These things may not make sense to you yet, but they will. And then the last one is the Enlightenment. So let's just click on the first one so you can see sort of what your choices are. Choice 1 is this early to high Renaissance, and the way that it's laid out is it gives you the image, gives you the artist, the date, the title, so you know what you're looking at. And then it kind of gives you some leading questions. It's still a formal paper, and it's formulated into 4 pages. It's not just like here's a question, now answer it. But this will help you make sure that you haven't missed anything, you haven't dropped any information that you might need. So use these questions to make sure when you're taking your notes that you kind of hit everything. There are 4 images for each paper topic. So choose the period you're most interested in. As we get closer to the final paper and you want, you'll probably know exactly what you want to write on. Some of these are a little easier to get 4 pages out of than others. The Renaissance is probably the hardest one to get 4 pages out of because a lot of the images, the changes are sort of nuanced. The Baroque is really easy, and the Enlightenment is really easy to get. You could just write and write and write. So if you need some advice as we get closer, please let me know about that. So I think that about covers it. There is an extra credit assignment. Let's see if we can get down there. At the bottom, extra credit assignment here. It's a museum visit. There's also like a virtual tour that you can take, and that's a 10-point assignment. It's due by the very end of the semester. So if you are interested in that, you might know closer to the end of the semester if you need it or if you don't. I do have office hours. I work at the Chino campus, but I can be on the Rancho campus if you'd like office hours. Another easy way is we can set up like a GoToMeeting or a Zoom meeting, and I can sort of pull up images and answer questions that way. And I'm more than happy to do that. So please hit me up if you need help. Hopefully this helps you sort of feel like you're ready to hit the ground running and ready for this semester. Please email me. Emailing is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. I'll send you announcements periodically. Please make sure you're reading those. A lot of them are tips for how to sort of boost your grade. A lot of them are tips for the upcoming exam. So please make sure you are listening or reading those announcements. And the best way to get a hold of me, as I said, is email rather than responding to an announcement. Email I can get on my phone, so even if I'm out at a different school or doing my thing, I can still respond to you. So definitely use email to get a hold of me. It was nice meeting you all, and I look forward to a great semester. Thanks so much. Bye.